Welcome back to the Reason Why podcast. We're breaking down what Christians believe, why, and how to know if it's true. Last time, Lewis brought us to an uncomfortable conclusion. Atheism is too simple to explain reality. But he also warned us about another kind of simplicity, a watered down Christianity that smooths out all the hard edges. A version of faith where God is good, everyone's basically fine, sin isn't real, hell doesn't exist, evil is just a misunderstanding, and redemption is unnecessary. And in this chapter, Lewis is going to insist on something we don't like hearing. If Christianity is true, don't expect it to be simple. Lewis argues that reality itself isn't simple. Our universe is vast, strange, beautiful, violent, ordered, and broken all at once. So, if there's something behind it all, something that explains why it exists and why it's moral but fractured, we should not expect that explanation to be neat or easy. In fact, Lewis says if Christianity were simple, if it reduced neatly to moral advice or vague spirituality, that would be evidence that we made it up. Simple stories are the ones humans invent. Reality is always more complicated. Lewis also warns us to be careful about straw man arguments, especially when it comes to Christianity. A couple of episodes back, we learned that a straw man is a logical fallacy, not typically meant to be malicious, but more so stemming from a misunderstanding. It's when you build a weak, simplified version of a belief and then knock it down easily. When people attack Christianity by saying things like, God just wants people to be nice, or religion is just a coping mechanism, or faith is about blind belief and control, Lewis would say they aren't rejecting Christianity. They're rejecting a caricature or a straw man. Christianity doesn't claim to be humanity's invention. Lewis says it claims to be something very different. It's God's statement to us of certain quite unalterable facts about his own nature. That's a bold claim, and it means Christianity can't be edited down to whatever makes us comfortable. In the last chapter, we heard about a few of Christianity's rivals as far as worldviews. Lewis now narrows the options even further. He argues that only two belief systems have the depth to explain what we actually experience in the world. And that is what we actually want. We want to believe in whatever explains reality, whatever ends up doing that truthfully. So Lewis puts forth dualism and Christianity. Let's define dualism. Dualism says that behind the universe are two equal, independent powers, one good and one evil, locked in an eternal struggle. In dualism, good and evil are co-eternal. Neither created the other. At first glance, this seems to explain the world pretty well. We see good, we see evil, and we see conflict. So what's the problem? Lewis argues that dualism collapses under inspection because evil isn't independent. Evil doesn't create anything on its own. It only corrupts. Cruelty, Lewis says, is not a thing in itself. He says people are cruel for 4 reasons: pleasure, money, power, or safety. But pleasure, money, power, and safety aren't evil in themselves. They start as good things and then get twisted. Evil doesn't invent desires, it hijacks them, which means evil must borrow from goodness in order to even exist. And if evil depends on good, if it's parasitic, then it cannot be an equal independent force. Darkness isn't a thing on its own. It's the absence of light. Rot isn't a substance. It's the corruption of something living. So where did evil come from? That leaves one remaining explanation. Evil was not created as evil. Something was created good and then went wrong. Not because God designed it to fail, but because real goodness requires the possibility of corruption. Lewis isn't finished explaining this yet, but he's setting the stage. And that brings us to one of the most famous lines in the book. Lewis says, "We are living in enemy-occupied territory." Christianity is the story of a world that belongs to God, but is not currently running the way it should. That's why things are broken. That is why injustice feels wrong. That's why goodness feels real, but fragile in a way. And that's why Christianity doesn't start with saying, everything's fine. It starts by saying, something has gone terribly wrong. And God is doing something about it. So Lewis has narrowed the field again. Evil isn't eternal. It isn't equal to good. It isn't independent. The Christian claim is that the world is broken because something good rebelled and invaded God's good world. And then God has launched an invasion of his own, of sorts, to reclaim what is his. And next time, Lewis will push this even further. Because once you accept that, you're forced to face a question you can't avoid forever. Who is this man, Jesus? And why does Lewis insist that he forces a decision? That's where we're headed next. If you were encouraged or challenged by this episode, please share it with a friend. You can find more help at my website, seektruthhere.com, and on Facebook and Instagram at seektruthhere. The truth is always worth knowing and sharing. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time. God bless.